sure that over the next few months and years, there's going to be multiple ways that I never even thought about. So if you come up with something, please, I'd love to hear from you. You can always contact me or post on our ACUA Facebook page or Instagram. Contact me, and I'd love to hear and see what you do, because this is just the beginning. So as you know, Carborundum has been around for a long time. I have nothing to do with the beginnings of the Carborundum gel. What I did, or I have nothing to do with the beginnings of Carborundum. What I did was I made a ready-to-use Carborundum gel. So the Carborundum grit is within an acrylic base that cleans up with soap and water, and it's formulated so that it can go through 110 silkscreen mesh, which is not most mesh, most print shops who do do silkscreen do have the 110. So I picked the most common mesh.
Is that American 110?
Yeah, I do know the Australian one, and I can't think of it right now, but if you Google it, that's what I did. Someone asked me, so you can convert it to whatever size it is
in the mid-40s.
in your country.
Or mid-40s.
Yeah. Even 12XX, works. So something a little coarse. What you don't want to use is the photo, that yellow one, the photo emulsion type. They're really thin weave. So there's many ways you could do. Took it off with the frame. You can also use it by just taping it down. If you do one, you could just tape it. You don't need the frame. But when you're doing multiple plates, then it's nice to have the frame that you can go up and down with. So when you screen print it on, it's very low, just a thin layer. So if you were to teach a class in one day, you could make your plates in the morning, take an hour for lunch, and then print them when you get back for lunch. So it enabled me to do a one-day workshop. I'll do a few plates. So when you get the plates, they usually have a plastic backing, and I usually take off just one side, and then when I get ready to print, I take the other side off so it keeps the back clean. But I'm going to take both sides off right now, just so we can see it.
Normalmente solo quita una pegatina de la plancha, y trabaja y después ya quita la otra bolsa. Pero ahora va a quitar las dos para que vea bien.
On one of the plates, I put painter's tape so that we can peel it off and only the Carborundum will go in certain areas. So you can use your imagination how you could use stencils with this process too.
En esta plancha lo que hizo fue pegar cinta.
Depending on the humidity in the room, to work with it with the Q-tips and rags. And then once it's totally dry, then I would go in with tools and scratch. So I'm going to start passing these around as soon as I squeegee it. I built a template underneath so I know where the paper or the plate will land. And I put silk screen tape around so that I can clean up more easily. So you said stare at it.
No, you do that too. You need to kind of mix it.
Not really. Yeah, that's a good question. Do you want to interpret that?
I can't even have to speak slower. She's from New York.
Hey, I've been here 3 days. I'm slowing down. So I put a lot on there. We'll only use a little bit, but I'll put it back. It's better to have a lot on there so that you have complete coverage.
Aunque ponga mucho, solo va a utilizar una parte, porque es cuando te viene hiper.
You could use any squeegee. They may have a different effect, but this one is very portable. This whole system is easy for me to travel. So if you're set up with screens and a more professional type of setup, that will work as well. Or you can just tape. You see how I have that one just taped loose? You can use that too. Okay. So it's the same process. You hold the squeegee at an angle. The plate's down there.
Luego tiene una serie. Gracias.
You could do it 1 or 2 times.
Una o dos veces, fácil.
The important thing is when you pull it off the mesh, you pull it off real quickly. So that was 2 times. So you see it's a little bubbly.
Ahí se ve cuando
You want it at an angle, and you're just removing it, just with a scrape. And then you're going to see a little buildup over here. And what I do is I have a brush sometimes, and I just kind of brush it off, especially right before, as I'm working, I brush it off. Or right before I'm ready to ink it up, I take off all those. So this is sort of a mark that is more like a woodcut. It's a straight graphic mark.
esta,
Now,
esta plancha es una plancha que ya está seca.
this line, this area was scraped. And there may be some, depending on how careful you are, there may be some scratch marks in there from slight scratches from the tool. I like that. It feels like a natural process for me to show what tools I'm using and how I'm working. If I don't want those scratch marks, then I would definitely work while it's wet. And then you could see, could I have that? Yes, please, thanks. So you can see the difference in the mark. This was dry, this area, and this area is wet. So you can see the buildup of when you're working wet, it pushes and it will build up a little more. So you'll have a smoother line in there, and it depends on how clean you are and what kind of opening area that you would have. So this one was done wet, this one was dry. The etching press, we're going to roll it up with release agent, and I'll show that to you shortly. Okay, so this is a roll-up process, no ink involved. Okay, so the original drawing was done just with the pencil. Okay, and so this is the first print. And I will show you how to do this. This was with the Yakua release agent. The release agent is a substance that was created for ghost printing monotypes. So what it does is it softens the residue of the ink from the first print so that when you go to print the second ghost image, it will release really well. So this is the first print.
Susan, can you show them behind you too?
And I got a third print. And then you can see it's lighter and lighter each time. Now, while it gets lighter, I could choose to make ghost prints, or I could stop and work into it here, or I think I may have take just like right here, it's a lot of crayon, but I think I may have used the water-soluble, the graph, this one, which is water-soluble, and then if you wet it, this one was printed. So with all these plates, what I did was one technique for each plate, so you can see the different results from each plate. But when I work, I usually work larger. I also work installation, I work sculptural, and I combine everything. So I separated everything so you can see the result without being confused with too many things on one image. So now I'm gonna confuse you. Okay, so this one was done by, oh, that. So instead of using a blank piece of mesh, I made a photo silk screen. I took a photograph with my camera of a mushroom. It's a mushroom. Okay?
So clear.
It's the kind that's on, it's a shelf mushroom, the kind that's on the tree this way. You know what I
Oh, it's one of those
mean?
ones.
It's a shelf mushroom. And I'll show you the whole, bracket, yes, the same thing, bracket mushroom. Okay, so I screen printed that onto this plate. So I got the lines, you see these really delicate lines, like I would not be able to carve like that. I would not be able to wipe like that or apply ink like that. That's definitely a photographic type line of a transfer. What worked with it wet all around it.
Printed with what?
We haven't got there yet.
No, sorry. Okay.
So you've done your own.
Yeah, I only use a Kua ink.
Okay, sorry, that's what I
We
wanted
know
to know.
that.
Okay, sorry. Silly question, sorry.
So actually this one, the print, okay, so, yeah, so you can see I manipulated this while it was still wet, while it was, as it dried. Okay, now you want to know how I printed it. Okay, so this, so you can see how the texture came through. Just remember I showed you like boom, boom, boom. So I used something that had like a dot texture in here. And then to further show some of that texture and pull it together, when I printed it, since the plate had some open areas, and we have two lines of ink. We have a Kua Intaglio, and we have a Kua liquid pigment. The liquid pigment is very thin. So what I did first was I inked it up with the Intaglio and wiped it. It was a very dark brown, black ink. And, yeah. And then what I did was, before I printed it, this only went through the press one time. Then when I went to print it, so I did the Intaglio, and then, because the liquid pigment is thinner, then I rolled the liquid pigment over the whole plate, and it gave it a thin film of color. And then I went in, just like I did work the plate, I worked the ink. Okay? But wait, there's more. That was all just manipulating it with the Q-tips. Yeah. It's a little higher, yeah, because I pushed it over so it's built up a little more. It's a photo process, and because it's a plate making process, I was able to make hundreds of these images. And then because the plates are really thin, I was able to cut them out with the scissors.
Ella puede tener un montón de copias, hacer fotográfica y al hacer la plancha fina pues puede recortar.
Okay. So I printed hundreds and hundreds of these, the bracket mushrooms. And sure. So you can see a smaller version, so you can play around with them, changing the size, changing the image. And then eventually they were embedded, those prints were embedded into sculptural installation. And so you can see I cut them out, some of them and then embed them into the sculptures. So this gives me another way of making multiples, but not making the same thing. So here's the steps, from print to cut out, insert into sculptures, and then finally the grand finale for working like this is that you can also use the Carborundum gel as a painting medium. And at that point, I use the, all right, here. This one. So then what I did was I painted the surface of the sculptures with a mixture of Carborundum gel and Aqua liquid pigment. Aqua liquid pigment is a liquid suspended in a, or pigment suspended in a liquid sort of watercolor base that it's very highly concentrated, and you can add it to the Carborundum gel or any other medium, but this gives you a really nice thickness. And then I built up the surface, and then I got the creation, of the, of texture on top of the prints, which were, has lots of videos about the Carborundum process and everything I've been showing you. We already have many videos, but our next video, I can't tell you when it'll actually come out, but it's coming soon. We'll have how to paint with the Carborundum gel and add the liquid pigment into it and use it as a painting medium. And what it does is when you paint with the Carborundum gel on paper, it makes it really like stone-like. It gives it a real structure that will make it stand. Also, when I print, I like to use the Arnhem 1618 paper, and I mostly use the heavyweight. And you can glue those prints together back to back, and that's all going to be in the next video. So stay tuned. If you go to the Speedball website and sign up for our mailing list, you'll automatically get an announcement when that video is out. Or you can go to the Akua YouTube channel and subscribe, and you'll find out when that video comes out. Because I know I gave you a lot of information. Okay. Any questions? You want to be a little cleaner than I am right now. I'm kind of rushing. So, all right, so.
Es algo especial de la marca. Es para quitar oil base.
Soy. Okay. And that plate. The plate that I saw. Okay, so it's clear in color.
Es soja, un agente antiadhesivo.
Se compra así.
Es soja, es basada. Es basada en soja.
No te quiere soya. It's a special step. Yeah.
All right, I'm kind of rushing here, so we might wind up with a little bit of plate marks or lap marks here. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for 3 minutes, and now. So I'm using Akua wiping fabric. I'm going to pass that around so you guys feel it.
Can we not use any other fabric?
You could use whatever you want. This is softer.
This is softer.
See the difference?
Yeah.
Feel the difference?
This has got a quill.
Try this. Alright. We have about 5 different blacks. And I'm going to use the lamp black. It's a nice blue black. Which.
Chris has got to have some texture. It's like that meditation.
Now this one you should mix up. Okay. So I'm going to put it on with the brayer, and I'm rolling this on pretty heavily. So, and I'm pressing pretty firmly down. Yeah, because I'm using it to apply. I want it to get really down into each area there. Alright, so once you have the ink on there, then you wipe it just like you would any other intaglio. So when you're doing this, sometimes it's hard to see. I like to do these on a light table. So I made the acrylic light table. And it has a flashlight.
Can we buy the flashlight for somewhere
Usually I have 4 flashlights in there, but since I was overseas this time, I only had 1. So this way you can kind of you can see what's going on a little better. This is Arnhem 1618. It's speedball paper.
¿La primera fue la de tinta o la de lápiz? La de lápiz.
Yeah,
This is the release.
that one's the crayon print. But release age.
You call it
Oh, that's why.
Losing my technique here. Okay.
Voila.
Okay. So this is carved. This is when I carved in here. This was when it was wet. So it's a bit underwiped. I could have wiped a little more. And then this is just the carved on the top, rolled on, not touched.